Welcome back to the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. I'm Tim Kotzman. I'm here with Adrian Morris. Adrian, thanks for the time. And how's your day going?
My day is going great. I am happy to be here with you again. We had a great conversation last time, so I'm sure we're going to have a great one this time.
Absolutely. I think this might be a masterclass in and of itself because we're going to go through some very specific topics. I'll start with a quote from Saylor himself that kind of encapsulates the strategy investment opportunity. Quote, "We have developed a company that's securitizing Bitcoin. So why do you buy strategy equity?" It says Microstrategy on the paper, but it's strategy equity because you want 1.5 times the performance of Bitcoin, or you want 1.5x the volatility of Bitcoin. What's on top of it? Derivatives like MSTX, MSTU. They give you 3 times the volatility of Bitcoin and 3 times the performance of Bitcoin. And then what's on top of that? Well, the entire options market of MSTR. It's a $30 to $35 billion open interest, giving you 10 to 20 times. So if what you want is more volatility and performance, you go up the stack. If you want less volatility, less performance, and less risk, you buy a bond. So that really speaks to, obviously, the stack of products that MSTR is building. And then the Farrington Capital Group actually came out and said, Saylor and Strategy aren't simply betting on Bitcoin. They're orchestrating a multi-layered financial engineering masterpiece that leverages both market dynamics and debt strategies in a way that could upend the crypto ecosystem. So that's a little bit of a mouthful. Any response to that?
Well, yeah, let's take it bit by bit. So if you take a look at what Saylor is doing, and we can draw parallels, right? So we have all of the conversation around the Bitcoin strategic reserve and the US government printing money to buy Bitcoin, right? What Saylor is doing is essentially printing shares to buy Bitcoin. He's treating his shares as a currency that he's exchanging for a harder asset, a harder currency, a more pristine form of collateral, right? He said this all the time. So when you think that through and then you look at that you think through that quote, let's go piece by piece. You have MSTU and MSTX, the leveraged strategy plays, right? They're going to give you 2x. Going to give you 2 times the volatility, 3 times the volatility, but there are a lot of people, as you know, that love those plays and they swear by them. Then we have Strategy itself, that because of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet, they're getting outsized returns comparatively to Bitcoin, and that's also going to give you a market volatility, right? And then you take a look at the convertible notes. That's adding leverage to the MicroStrategy balance sheet. That's allowing them to take out debt, pay that debt back in shares. It's giving the note holder exposure to upside potential while also giving them protection from downside potential because when they have the right to pay back, they're paying back the debt with MicroStrategy shares. It's kind of a safe bet, right?
Mhm.
And that's what he just talked through. He went from the top of the stack with the most volatile, with being the leverage plays, to the, I don't want to say bottom of the stack, but the other side of the stack with the
Mhm.
convertible notes. He's turned the volatility of MicroStrategy into the product. And there's many, many people in the market that are going after it for different reasons. And then we finally have the options market, right, which is huge. We see in our feeds every single day, people are talking about, oh, I have long calls, I have long puts, I have covered calls, there's so many different players right now that are in the market because of MicroStrategy. Oh, sorry, strategy and
Yeah.
because of the levered play that he's brought to bear. And to the second quote that says that they can upend the entire crypto ecosystem, let's talk about the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. When you have strategy, when you have Semler Scientific, when you have Cooler, when you have Rumble, now when you potentially have, GameStop that we saw from that tweet today, by the Kobesi letter and all the other tweets that have been talking about GameStop, what happens is you have all of these other players coming into the market. They're all leveraging their balance sheets to buy Bitcoin. They're all creating more volatility in the system, which is going to have a feedback loop of creating Bitcoin on the balance sheet. You're using your shares to buy Bitcoin, which is pushing the price of Bitcoin up, which is pushing up the leverage and the volatility on your balance sheet, and it's just wash, rinse, repeat. That's going to upend the model. Because when usually people come into the market trying to get those outsized returns, they're looking at the altcoins, right? All the meme coins. I think that's fundamentally changed. You now have the institutional players. You have like the BlackRocks and so on and so forth. You have the MicroStrategy. Sorry, I keep saying it, but it's going to take me a while to get used to it. The strategies and the other players in the market. That's a fundamental difference from previous cycles and what we've experienced. So it really truly can't upend the model.
Convertible notes, strike, not Jack Mahler's, but strike, STRK, and the ATM equity. So we're going to get to all of those. Let's start with the convertible notes, which is debt. So when strategy is leveraging convertible debt, they're borrowing money from a lender or an investor where both parties enter the agreement with the intent to repay all or part of a loan by converting it into a certain number of its preferred or common shares at a predetermined point in the future. In the case of strategy, one of the most unique aspects of this approach is that it may create this feedback loop where using borrowed funds to purchase Bitcoin increases the price of Bitcoin and the stock valuation, driving up leverage and volatility while simultaneously offering the purchasers of the notes downside protection.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that feedback loop and any other aspects to that?
Sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly with what it does. So let's say that you want to get $1 billion in debt, right? For the express purposes of buying Bitcoin. You're going to enter into this agreement that says we will pay back the debt in a share price at a future date at a certain price point per share, and you are essentially, and granted, I'm talking as a Bitcoiner here, you're essentially guaranteed your money back with interest, right? And you're getting the exposure to the Bitcoin ecosystem without taking on the debt risk directly. MicroStrategy is able to take on the debt. They're able to buy the Bitcoin. They're able to put it on their balance sheet. They're able to lever up their balance sheet. They're able to increase volatility, which increases the stock price, which increases the likelihood that they'll be able to pay back the debt earlier, because they do have the option, I believe, to pay back the debt at an earlier date. They don't necessarily have to wait until the expiry of that particular convertible note. So it is a win-win for both parties. The lender gets exposure to volatility and gets their money back plus interest. MicroStrategy gets the ability to buy Bitcoin and lever up the volatility on their balance sheet and increase their stock price, and they get to wash, rinse, repeat it. So strategy right now has converts going out to what? You have 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, all the way to 2032. They are likely going to extend it out even further once they get through this round of converts. I believe they have about 17.5 billion of converts left, around 4 billion and change of the ATM. They've got that's $11 billion right there of purchasing power that they have. Sorry, not 11 billion, 21 billion of purchasing power left. That's a lot of pressure that they can put on the market in terms of upwards momentum on the Bitcoin price. So that's where that feedback loop comes in. They take out more debt, they buy more Bitcoin. Because of the volume of Bitcoin they're buying, the Bitcoin price goes up, the MicroStrategy's share price goes up, and it's just a continuous cycle. People have called it, the infinite money glitch. That's not, and Saylor hates that, right? But it is a feedback loop. Or what Raekwon calls it, that flywheel, where you're just debt, Bitcoin share price goes up, issue more debt, buy Bitcoin share price, and it just feeds itself. So quite frankly, it is a very simple yet ingenious way of buying Bitcoin. Coming back to my previous point, if you're thinking about it in terms of issuing one currency to get a more pristine asset, he's issuing his shares to get a more pristine asset while simultaneously driving up the value of his shares.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by OnRamp. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risks and trade-offs. OnRamp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated, cold storage, multi-sig vault, guarded by 3 independent, institutional-grade custodians, none of which have unilateral control. multi-institution custody removes the technical, mental, and physical burdens of private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. To learn more, schedule a consultation with the OnRamp team. Go to www.onrampbitcoin.com. Let's hit on Strike, which is Strategy's preferred stock offering. So Strategy, after fees and other costs, $563.4 million of preferred stock was issued. This is certainly a prime example of how they're leveraging innovative financial instruments. They're coming to market with additional products to harness the market volatility while targeting a different investor group, whereas because this is more of a fixed income offering. So the Strike STRK IPO had a target of $250 million. It was upsized to $584 million, which is obviously up over 2x. And they're incorporating an 8% dividend yield, fixed income, with the versatility of cash or stock payouts. I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that they're going to pay it out by cash, but legally they could do either. And that optimizes the availability of working capital. The conversion mechanism of the offering creates a synthetic call option with a $1,000 conversion price set at a premium to current market levels, combined with a 10-to-1 conversion ratio. The 10-to-1 conversion highlights the bullish future outlook that the strategy management must have for the stock. Additionally, the perpetual structure of these shares provides a permanent infusion of capital without imposing a maturity date. So that avoids immediate shareholder dilution. And then lastly, the flexible dividend arrangement ensures that liquidity is maintained for future Bitcoin acquisitions, redemption terms, which is 25% of the original liquidation preference, and provides opportunities to refine the company's capital framework. Do you want to cover that, but maybe in English?
So very, very simply, think of it, Saylor's creating his own peer-to-peer group that's going after MicroStrategy stock for different reasons, right? So as we just detailed, we have all the volatility plays, all the leverage plays. We have MSTU, MSTX. We even talked about MISTI. That's another dividend play. We have the convertible notes. Now we have the Strike offering. The Strike offering is for those individuals that are looking for a less volatile option. Well, they're also seeking the ability to get a dividend yield in a fixed income instrument on strategy stock. Now, some people in the in the community have been saying, well, why would I buy this? Why would I just buy MSTR? Why would I buy Strike? Well, quite frankly, you are a different kind of investor, right? This is for institutional level players or perhaps individuals that have a longer term view that want to get a consistent 8% return on their investment. So again, creating a series of products on top of the MicroStrategy stock is how Saylor is attracting all of these different players into the market, which is eventually going to drive the stock price up even further. We've got the degens that want the 2x and the 3x. We've got the institutional players that are using the converts for, return on investment, obviously, and different arbitrage opportunities. And we've got the fixed income investor now coming in looking for that 8% dividend with preferred stock. Those are three entirely different buckets of investors that are all taking the same bite out of the same apple. I think it's rather ingenious, quite frankly. And I see him finding new ways to do it going forward.
That makes sense. It's like a buffet, right? Some people want the 8% yield. Some people want the double, triple, dipple, something that is appealing to them, but not to the guys that want a consistent yield.
Precisely.
All right. Let's touch on everyone's favorite topic, the ATM.
ATM. Yep, I knew that was the next one.
So for those not aware, Strategy sells equity at the market. These are newly issued shares issued into the market through designated sales agents at market prices. It allows them to raise capital while maintaining control over timing and size of sales. So at a high level, they can implement floor prices below which sales won't occur. They can set percentage limitations on daily sales. They can start and stop the sales based on market conditions. What else should we cover on the ATM besides that people are losing their minds over the fact that you're selling shares and then literally turning around and just buying Bitcoin with them. So it's not dilutive, it's accretive.
It is. And you just hit one of the first points right there. This is not a dilutive activity. This is an accretive activity because it's purchasing Bitcoin and putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and you're getting exposure to that upside volatility with having Bitcoin on the balance sheet by being a strategy shareholder. So that is the first thing. The second thing is there are a lot of misconceptions, I think, that people have about how an ATM is, how the equity offering is executed. First of all, it's not Saylor and his minions sitting down selling the shares on Robinhood and Fidelity and all these other places, right? They're using a third party, and they're doing it through either what's called a VWAP or a TWAP. So a VWAP is a volume weighted average price algorithm, and a TWAP is a time weighted average price algorithm. All that means is with the volume weighted, it is executing sales at certain volume levels. So if the volume is rather high, they're executing sales. If the volume is extremely low, they're executing fewer sales. Time weighted is a similar concept, except with time as a factor. So with a time weighted a TWAP, what they're doing is they are issuing shares into the open market at specific times where it is advantageous for them to do so, and both are done in a way to be market neutral. Now, that is not to say that they are completely market neutral. They are intended to be market neutral because these shares are being trickle fed into the market in a way that goes with the volume and that goes with the market timing in such a fashion that they're not moving the price, right? Because if they were doing so, they could be considered to be manipulating the stock price, right? If any company can just go into the market and start, dumping shares and slamming the price down, or advantageously manipulating the price activity to shove the price up, that could be considered market manipulation. So that's why they're done third party, and that's why they're done algorithmically. Also, proportionally, the ATM is a very, very small portion of overall trading volume. I believe that Strategy shared a slide that said it's 2.9% overall for all the periods that they've done it. For the recent periods of the 21-21 plan, the lowest was like 0.05% and the highest was almost 7%. Even still, proportionally, that is not a lot. And people also, I think, I don't want to say not seeing the forest for the trees, but we have so many different players in the market right now. We have spot Bitcoin, we have spot Bitcoin, we have spot Bitcoin ETFs, we have the futures market, we have the options market on top of the Bitcoin ETFs, we have the options market for MicroStrategy, we have the options market for MSTU and MSTX. We have so many different players in the market right now that can affect stock price. I think that saying the ATM is what's pushing price down, or the lack of ATM is what's pushing the price up, is perhaps a little bit short-sighted, and it has a little bit of a narrow view. Quite frankly, without evidence as to what extent these other factors are not affecting the price, you can't say to what extent the ATM is affecting the price. So I think that people need to see the ATM for what it is. It's one of the other levers that Saylor's pulling to be able to get more Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and understand that just because the price is going down, that's not because Saylor's hitting the ATM, right? There's so many other factors that go into play with regards to this to the price action, that blaming the ATM, I think, is a little bit narrow. Is a little bit of a narrow view.
Yeah, that makes sense, that there are preset parameters, whether it's time weighted, volume weighted. If you look at one of the slides from the last earnings call, you can see that they were selling more shares when basically the Bitcoin price was screaming, or they had like larger volume, without misquoting. And then tell me your thoughts on this. It kind of hits me as this weird thing where you just set parameters, and then those are the guardrails by which you operate. Because literally, if you were watching it so closely and starting and stopping it so that it didn't affect the price, then you really would be manipulating it. So it's like, look, it's set on these parameters, whether it's actually, affecting the price or not is like not even a consideration because it's within these parameters that are set so that it's not either, I want to use the word adversely, but like it's not affecting the price in some sort of manipulated way or direct and like striking way, no pun intended, where like, oh, I'm trying to actually get a certain result. You're not. You're just setting these parameters and you're off to the races.
Exactly. So also, this is where Strategy's transparency and Saylor's transparency could perhaps even work against them. Because he has set this precedent that he announces whenever they're doing he's essentially announcing the ATM, right? Like for instance, we have dot day. I call it dot day. On Sunday, he puts out the Saylor chart, and then on Monday, it's corn day. He's buying Bitcoin, right? So for the last 12 weeks, he methodically did that every Sunday and Monday before the blackout period, before the earnings call, right?
Yep.
So what he's essentially said to the market is, I've established a pattern that we are in an accumulation phase. Therefore, people that are trying to short, they're going to advantageously use that to short. They're going to say, okay, you're applying some pressure. I'm going to apply more pressure now and
Mm-hmm.
push the price down even further. And that is where I think investors in the Bitcoin community needs to be more cognizant of the fact that retail is not moving this trade. These are institutional level players that are moving the trade. These are exchange desks. These are the hedge funds. These are the individuals that are like the sovereign wealth funds across the world, like in Norway, for instance, that are buying MicroStrategy. BlackRock is buying MicroStrategy because they have assets under management and MicroStrategy is part of their portfolio that their clients want, and they proportionally have to buy more MicroStrategy shares. There are so many large players that are moving this trade that any one um, indicator, whether it be the ATM, whether it be are they going to do converse or not, that's not pushing the price. The institutions have where they want the price to go, and until then, we are along for the ride. And the trick is you have to hang on for the ride to see that upside potential because, a lot of us have been in the trade much longer than others. We've rode these waves, so we are okay with it. But the notion that MicroStrategy, I keep saying MicroStrategy, that strategy would issue the ATM deliberately knowing it's going to crater their price intuitively doesn't make sense. The lower the price of their shares, the more shares they have to issue to buy the Bitcoin. They would want to do it in a way that if their price is, say, 300 or 400 or even 500, it stays within a range of that price that they're issuing the shares in order to be able to buy the Bitcoin. They're not going to do it in a way that's going to screw over investors, and they're not going to do it in a way that's going to screw over themselves.
Do you think, from your view and your seat, that the posts and the accusations of a Ponzi scheme are growing louder or softer and kind of dying down and going away? Right, we had a regulatory environment under Gary Gensler that was, let's just say, less than ideal. That's
Quite
now
hostile.
that's now changed. And you were just speaking to the transparency of Saylor and strategy to the market. So do you want to give your thoughts on kind of walking through why that's kind of ridiculous at this point or any point?
So you just hit on the first nail. Under Gary Gensler, we had a very, very hostile environment towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, right? So within that environment, you had a corporation that made the decision to acquire Bitcoin onto their balance sheet. If there were anything that was not above board,
Mm-hmm.
the SEC had every single motivation and every single incentive to snuff that out. And in a way that would have been far more effective than some random guy on X or Twitter creating a YouTube video saying that MicroStrategy is a Ponzi scheme and here's how.
Mm-hmm.
All the another piece of the puzzle is that a lot of the individuals that are making the claims that MicroStrategy is a Ponzi quite literally don't know what they're talking about. For instance, there a lot of them, for instance, you had Martin Shkreli, for instance, saying that Saylor could get margin called. We know that he can't. The debt is unencumbered. You have other individuals saying that he's using the ATM to push up volatility in his stock, when quite literally we know that it's not the ATM that's pushing up the volatility in the stock, it's the convertible notes on the balance sheet that are levering up the balance sheet that are pushing up the volatility on the stock. You have individuals making very grandiose set in stone claims about MicroStrategy being a Ponzi scheme without even understanding the nuances of how it works. So that's why I discount a lot of them first, just off top, without even thinking about it too much. Then when we go into it further, you know that Ben Workman, Punter Jeff, Dan Hillary, grain of salt, all of us are looking at these SEC filings that MicroStrategy does, right? Up until recently with the strategy website, I and many others have been manually and systematically going through the 8Ks with every purchase, with every ATM, with every convert, going through and tallying up and systematically tracking everything that they've been doing. You have guys like Radu who have done the MSTR tracker. You have, the Saylor tracker. You have so many individuals in the market that are watching this extremely closely, that know the stock and know the plan and know the playbook very, very well. If we haven't raised the alarm by now, especially considering that a lot of us are Bitcoiners and we are rather, how do I put it delicately, unforgiving of individuals that come into our space looking to do untoward activities, I think that the general, everyday investor can rest somewhat easy. So that's the second piece. The final piece is the transparency that you spoke of, right? You have Saylor that he's putting out tweets whenever they do an at the market offering, whenever they do a convert, whenever they do a Bitcoin purchase, right? Which is more than we can say for a lot of companies in the space. They're not being as transparent as to when they're doing ATMs. They're just saying it on an earnings call that they're going to be doing it, but not giving you the exact dates, so on and so forth. You then have the fact that with the rebrand to strategy, they now have a strategy website that's showing all of the metrics, everything from Bitcoin holdings to converts to debt to how they compare against their peers. I mean, one of the primary characteristics of a Ponzi scheme is obscuring the facts. You're not really understanding where the money's coming from. You're not really understanding where that return is coming from. How much more transparent does Saylor and strategy need to be in order for people to understand that this is not a Ponzi scheme? This is a new kind of financial engineering. That does not make it a Ponzi scheme just because you don't understand it.
Hmm. And maybe we can also point out that some individuals may know what they're talking about, but may be saying things that they even know are not quite accurate because they're trying to get a certain result. Like if they're literally professionally shorting the stock.
Correct.
So although it may not be ethically correct, like there's nothing stopping someone from going onto social media and saying something that they know is false or the exact opposite of what the reality is.
Right. And to that point, we had, I don't know if you recall, the Carousel Capital short and distort report, like early in 2024. I think it was like March or April. And they came out saying that, and they are one of the initial most vocal proponents of, if MicroStrategy has X amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, that should be the valuation. There should be no multiple, right? And that was the whole premise of their short and distort report. And you've had others that are essentially parroting the same talking points. They're just, changing one thing here, one thing there. And to your point, it may be that they're trying to short it at an institutional level like Harrisdale, or they're just looking for impressions and follows and ad revenue on Twitter and YouTube, right? And they're saying it for that reason because they know that by saying that, it's going to get a lot of attention on whatever they're saying or on their particular video. So yeah, you do have those individuals as well. Absolutely.
In my mind, just to myself, but I'll say it out loud, I just kind of think of it as like the Jerry Springer effect, right? Like if I say something outrageous, then I'll get hundreds of thousands of views. And but anyways, any
That's
additional
true.
any additional thoughts on the strategy rebrand? What you think the motivation for it may have been? Anything else on that topic?
Yeah, sure. So I think this, Saylor said a few points himself. He was like, you have no idea how many times over the years I've heard someone say Microstrategies,
Hmm.
or they're having that kind of a understanding of not or misunderstanding of the stock. And now that this Saylor playbook has allowed strategy to scale to such a level. They are truly a global company, right? We know that they have wealth funds in foreign countries like Norway that are buying the shares. He says that he sees representation of strategy globally, so it was time for a rebrand, and I think that made perfect sense. Also, you have along the lines of people that are trying to make bear cases or trying to make accusations that things might not be above board. Every so often someone goes back down to all the way back to 2000 and the 2000 dot-com bubble, and the fact that Saylor lost, what was it, like 5 or 6 billion dollars in a day, and he almost, got wiped out, and so on and so forth. I think he's trying to rip off that band-aid and break that association altogether as well, so that strategy is now seen as an entirely different kind of company with an entirely different connotation. And I believe that, it was well thought out. I personally don't mind it. I know some people have been making fun of it, saying that, oh, it's just a single word, and why would you just say strategy and so on and so forth. But honestly, I think it's straightforward. I think it's less is more sometimes, and I like the rebrand myself, especially with all of the additional steps he's done with creating strategy.com with all the analytics and really leaning into the change versus just saying, okay, now we've done a name change and we're going to sell some merch and that's it.
The Bitcoin for Corporations conference is coming to Orlando May 6th and 7th. Receive 20% off admission by going to microstrategy.com, selecting Bitcoin for Corporations, and using discount code KOTZ at checkout, and I'll see you there. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Stampseed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. Yeah, I mean, for anyone who has not gone to strategy.com, I would invite you to go, because you just get hit right in between the eyes with like a hedge fund. It's like, what? Is this a Bitcoin hedge fund? Because you have all the numbers, all the stats on multiple tabs. It's just, yeah, very, the colors, the presentation, everything is just right there in one place. So very cool. Do you want to walk through Semler Scientific a little bit? From the
Sure.
aspect of, they've kind of gotten the machine up and running now, from selling additional shares into the market. The options market has been trading for some time now. Their stock has about tripled since adopting the Bitcoin strategy. And how do you see any differences, if any, from strategy to Semler's strategy and the potential for outperformance?
So Semler is of all of the leveraged Bitcoin equities that we would call them, right? These are all the companies that have, Bitcoin on a balance sheet and are using it to create additional leverage and volatility. So that's what strategy is. That's what Semler is. That's what Marathon is. The Bitcoin miner. They're looking to create more volatility on their balance sheet. The The main difference between Semler and MicroStrategy is in the core business. Semler has a successful core business. They're in the healthcare biomedical field. They have products that are currently in a state of limbo. So one of them is QuantaFlow that they're looking for a few clearances on. But the core business that they have is very, very strong, which is in a contrast to how some people perceive MicroStrategy's core business, the business analytics business, right? So in terms of what it can do in the market, if they're following, which they are, the strategy playbook very, very intently, as you mentioned, they have the options market that finally went live. They were waiting for that for some time. And by having the options market, that opens the door for them to do the convertible notes, which they've started to do. They've been doing the ATM. They've been doing a few other things that I'm still wrapping my head around in terms of generating leverage. with a strong core business and that additional leverage, they could theoretically outperform MicroStrategy at certain points. This is not me giving an endorsement saying that they are going to outperform.
Mhm.
This is me saying that because of their strong core business and because historically they have had very, very strong stock performance at certain points because of that core business, it is not unreasonable to assume that when you throw in Bitcoin leverage on top of that, that we're going to have a strong possibility of outperformance. Then there's the fact that their market cap is much smaller than strategies, and proportionally, their Bitcoin is a larger proportion, is a large proportion of their market cap in separate from their core business. So there are a lot of very, very positive tailwinds for Semler Scientific. There are a lot of things that are attractive about it. And once they get some of this regulatory morass out of the way, that I'm still wrapping my head around because I'm still trying to figure out, well, if there's nothing, with the FDA, it's a whole quagmire that's outside my wheelhouse, right? So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what kind of headwinds that they are facing there. Once those clear, and all indicators are that they are going to clear, I don't want to say sky's the limit, but I'm going to say that they have a lot of room to run at
Mhm.
that point because the market is going to then say, well, now you have this company that has this strong core business that has Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They've got these regulatory hurdles that have been cleared. Maybe it's time to take a look at the stock. And I do think that they're going to become a $1 billion company at some point. Right now, I believe their market cap is like 500 million, let's say, roughly. Um, or not 500 million. So, actually, don't quote me on that exact figure. I don't want to say the wrong figure. Their market cap can reach $1 billion at some point. I do believe so. How high they go from that point, I'm not sure, but $1 billion from where they are today is a significant return. And they have over, I think, 3,100 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They're being very aggressive with the accumulation of Bitcoin. So if you take a look at strategy and then take a look at Semler, Semler is operating kind of as a smaller version of MicroStrategy. So that is why I myself, not financial advice, anyone that's watching this, have a position in Semler Scientific.
So Eric Semler, chairman of Semler Scientific, this week has introduced a new concept, and the first company that he's called out is Zoom. So, what is your initial reaction to Eric's zombie zone?
I think
Welcome
that,
to the zombie zone.
yeah, no, I loved it. I actually retweeted that when he did it. So I don't know if people watching this that may or may not be aware. I actually was one of the first people to speak with Eric about the Bitcoin Treasury on a Spaces way back when they first announced, right? So I've been in communication with him. I've spoken to him and I live streamed with him several times since then, and I've watched his progression from being, less sure about what he should say or how he should say it to being very, very, very vocal about his thoughts about the potential of using Bitcoin to enhance corporate balance sheets and to enhance volatility and so on and so forth. I love it. I love the fact that he is now saying, this is my personal opinion as someone that has followed the Saylor playbook and is now implementing my own version of the playbook. Here are the companies that I think that can benefit from it. Here are the companies that I think are, quote unquote, zombie companies, like Saylor said, right? They have money on the balance sheet, but they have nowhere to go with it. And I read through his post. It was very, very well thought out. I'm curious to see what other companies he puts on it, quite frankly. Is he going to put GME on it, right? Is he going to put
He
other
better hurry
companies?
up. He better
Well,
hurry up.
right,
Maybe
right, yeah,
GameStop will buy
because
Bitcoin. We don't know.
yeah, because they already may be on the way to adopting the Saylor playbook. Yeah, I don't want to call it the evolution of Eric Semler, but quite frankly, it is because I contrast it to how Michael Saylor was when he first started, right back in August
Mm,
2020.
mhm.
He wasn't as perhaps clear in his thoughts of how he was going to do the play. He knew where he wanted to take it. He knew how to get there. He just didn't know how to get the message across. And you
Hmm.
see him progress through talking about the energetic properties of Bitcoin, talking about the pristine collateral qualities of Bitcoin. He went through a Bitcoin rabbit hole like we've never seen, and he's brought up some of the most interesting euphemisms about Bitcoin that we have in the space. And then he has these talking points about strategy. Volatility is vitality, right? He has all of
Hmm.
these catchphrases, and he's become kind of like the godfather of Bitcoin in the space. I think Eric Semler is taking a similar trajectory. He's becoming more vocal, he's becoming more self-assured and also self-aware of his position in the space. And I think he's using his voice, and I love it.
And do you think that speaks to just everyone's journey, whether it's Michael or now Eric, just more time, more experience, more conversations, more time to kind of reflect, or and being around the campfire? I mean, it just I actually didn't see until a day or two ago. Eric was posting pictures. He was hanging out with Michael on Super Bowl Sunday, or at least that's when he posted the pictures, like at Michael's house. Like you have to like physically get people or digitally around the campfire, maybe to just be like intensely on that journey, or how do you think of that?
I think that there is an aspect of going on the journey, you are right, but I also think there's an aspect of, you need that orange pill moment, I guess everyone talks about, right? Once
Hmm.
it clicks, it clicks. And I think Bitcoin, I said this on a stream with Block Fuel the other day, and other people have used this exact phrase, and I don't know where it originally came from, but an idea whose time has come is hard to ignore,
Hmm.
right? And I think the idea of Bitcoin is time has come. And what we are seeing through the adoption curve and through different individuals and corporations and institutions getting on this curve with us is more and more people are coming into Bitcoin for a variety of reasons, right? For Uncle Larry Fink, it's straight up to make money because he knows this is a great asset. For Saylor, for Semler, it is they had zombie companies and they're looking for a way to increase shareholder value and increase market cap and increase value of the company. Guys like you and me, we're looking for probably just for a way for financial freedom, financial sovereignty, a way to beat inflation. Like you and I can probably talk about and go down a list of reasons as to why we are, in the Bitcoin space. And I think that that's what has to happen. Everyone has to go through their own version of that journey. But once you hit that orange pill moment, I think it's very, very interesting that I have never run into someone that said, I was a Bitcoiner, not a Bitcoin holder, right? I was a
Hmm.
Bitcoiner, someone that really believed in the ethos of Bitcoin, believed in this power as an asset, as collateral, as property, so on and so forth. And then I just sold it all and said, ah, screw it, I don't want it anymore. I haven't run into people like that. I've run into people that have bought Bitcoin and couldn't handle the volatility and
Hmm.
sold. I've run into people that have held Bitcoin for some time and took profits and they're like, I made money on it, so what? But there are the believers that are also investors, and then there are the investors that are not believers. And I think, you know, Michael and Eric, they are the investors that are also believers, or believers that became investors. That is a very, very different group. That's where we see a lot of that in the strategy community. We're seeing that now in the similar community. We see that a lot in the Bitcoin community. It's a different kind of investor altogether. And I believe those individuals have to go through the journey, and once they go through it, they're in it for the long haul.
Do you have any quick thoughts on Cooler?
So Cooler is one that I'm becoming more and more interested in because they have the potential of having they have NASA contracts, they have military contracts, they have battery development contracts with both. They have potential. Now, this is not me giving an endorsement of Cooler by any means or anything like that, but it is a company that as a Bitcoin treasury company, I am looking at because they already do have an options market. So I'm looking at, are they going to start issuing converts at some point? Like, how are they going to scale this Bitcoin strategy? Right now, they're still under 1,000 Bitcoin, and I did have the opportunity to interview Michael Mo, the CEO of Cooler, and he said that they are currently working towards a goal of 1,000 Bitcoin. Then they'll see where they'll take it. Now, I don't think that means they'll get to 1,000 and stop. I think they want to see how they can effectively get to 1,000 and then see what kind of opportunities open up there. So On the surface, I'm growing very, very interested in them. They're an entirely different industry, and because they have that military NASA connection, they do have the potential to become a much, much larger company, and all it takes is one or two contracts for it to do that. So those are my initial thoughts on it. I do have more, but I don't want to seem like I'm endorsing or not endorsing, so I'll leave it at that.
And it's interesting that he made the comment about the 1,000 Bitcoin because you have ETF issuers like Bitwise that are trying to put together products where you would include a company in a certain ETF product when they have at least 1,000 Bitcoin or more on their balance sheet. So be interesting to see how all that develops.
That could be part of it. I didn't ask him that, but maybe I should have. That could be part of it.
What are your thoughts on the strategic Bitcoin reserve or the national digital asset stockpile or whatever we're calling it this week? And
Yeah.
also, any quick thoughts on the proposed sovereign wealth fund for the United States?
So I'll start with the sovereign wealth fund. I don't have a strong opinion on that one yet, solely because I'm trying to understand the nuances of it. Is it simply going to be the United States government choosing particular equities to invest in and then holding them? Okay, fine. But doesn't that kind of mean that the United States government is picking winners and losers? Do we really want to, set that precedent? That's kind of where I go with it. I'm not for it or against it, but that's just kind of where I'm going with it for now. People may even call me hypocritical and say, well, how is a strategic Bitcoin reserve different than, than the US government saying Bitcoin's the winner and other cryptocurrencies are not? Well, I would say that, to answer your question on the SBR, one, even if it does happen, it's being portrayed as a way to bolster the United States dollar, right? To increase the strength of the dollar. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle is we have the national debt. And Bitcoin's nature being as it is, we can theoretically accumulate Bitcoin and in a period of 10, 20, 30 years, proportionally the national debt to the Bitcoin holdings, assuming the price appreciation goes where we all think it's going to go, that puts the United States government in a very, very powerful position, right? Globally and domestically because of the relationship with regards to debt and inflation and so on and so forth. I'm one of the ones that while I am very bullish on the potential for Bitcoin if an SBR does happen, I'm one that is more skeptical that it would happen. And I'm skeptical for two reasons. One is more positive than the other, though. Firstly, we're dealing with politicians. I don't care whether they're Democrat, Republican, you're dealing with politicians, and it's politicians that are going to have to push this forward. I made a post the other day that I got a lot of heat for where I said, politicians don't drive change, necessity does. And if you look through the history, politicians and leaders often don't do things ahead of the curve. They do things when they have to do them. They do things when they
Mm.
reach a fever pitch. They do things when it is politically expedient or convenient to do so. So what I am wrestling with is, can the SBR get pushed through, or are we going to find ourselves in a position where you have a lot of politicians, a lot of leaders that are pro SBR, and then you have ones that are against it, trying to muddy the waters, and it gets caught up in a political quagmire like everything else does. Any other piece of legislation, and it turns out that it never gets off the ground. So that's one angle of it. Another angle of it is I could see it happening as a response.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is if the UAE, or whether it be Saudi Arabia, one of those countries that are sitting on untold amounts of wealth that we really quite don't understand because no one knows just how much money they have in oil and other assets. If they come out and say, we as a sovereign nation with this massive war chest of money are going to start buying Bitcoin in size, I think that sets up a flare to the world that says, oh, this is something that we really need to consider. And then I can see the US government doing it as a response to that and then pushing the SBR through by seeing over the course of a year, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, just how crazy the price appreciation has been and just how well it's worked for other nations for them to now say we can't miss out because they are buying in size. We have 200,000. We've seen a 200,000 and how much it's grown. Why are we not also doing this? That's one way I can see it playing out.
In 60 seconds or less, what are your predictions for Bitcoin for the rest of 2025 in relation to liquidity, markets, interest rates, and global M2?
Oh, wow. Okay. 60 seconds. So let me go heart versus head. My heart says that we can definitely match the last cycle, which would mean that we're probably looking at a price of $350,000 to $400,000 by the end of this year. That's what my heart tells me. My head tells me we have too many institutional players in the mix right now that have a vision for where they want this to go. We have the Fed that's fighting not to lower interest rates. We have the current administration that is trying to force them into lowering interest rates. We have tariffs. We have the fact that, I can't even get into global M2 right now, but that is also a factor. I think we have tailwinds and we have headwinds, and Bitcoin is smack in the middle right now. So that leads me to believe that we can trend between 90 to $150,000 for the next 3 years. I hope that was 60 seconds.
Yeah. I wanted to end with something that is certainly near and dear to your heart. D.R. Lewis passed away very recently. I was listening to the episode that I had the pleasure of doing with him very recently. And I just want to read a quick quote. Like, literally, this is what he had to say about his family. I have a wonderful wife. She's my world. She's my partner. I couldn't do anything I do without her. And 2 kids. They're great kids. They're squared away. And they've been orange pilled. My wife as well. So, whatever you'd like to add, but he's going to be missed.
DR. I started talking to DR February or March of 2024. And I had said something in one of his posts where, this would be a great content to have for spaces. No one's really doing spaces and whatnot. He took it upon himself to reach out to me. He said, "Hey man, I think you're really smart. I think you're great. Let's start doing spaces together and let's start having conversations about these topics on Bitcoin miners." And it blossomed into a friendship. He and I talked every single day up until this Saturday before I got the phone call from his brother-in-law that he had a heart attack and slipped into a coma. He was one of the most genuine dudes in the space. He was just one of the most genuine dudes altogether. He never played false. He said things as they were. He gave his opinion. He was very welcoming to others. He was very welcoming to me. He was a friend to me. He, gave me advice on a wide variety of items. And quite frankly, when I got that call, I was at dinner and I was mid-sip and it took the wind out of my chest. That's no bullshit, because I had literally just talked to him the day before. I had live streamed with him that Friday. We were on with TerraWolf and we did a live stream with them. And by that Sunday, he was in a coma. And for a solid 2 minutes, I couldn't reconcile what I was being told because it was so sudden. It was such a shock. And he finally passed away on February 7th after being in hospice. And when that finally sunk in, I said to myself, this still doesn't feel real. He really, really, really is going to be missed. I'm going to miss him. I still have our messages, our text messages, our DMs, and I see them because he's a pinned conversation, and it's just so wild and so painful and so sad that someone like him is gone, and the space, the world, the world needs people like him. He loved his family. He was crazy about his wife. He was crazy about his kids. He was bullish on Bitcoin. He was bullish on Bitcoin miners. He was a MicroStrategy investor. He had his fingers in everything. He talked a little bit to everyone. So if people haven't had an opportunity to get to know him, they really missed out. And I've been really, really, really bummed out about DR, and I've been thinking about him on a daily basis since then. And I mean, I'm just gonna miss him. I'm just gonna miss him. Like honestly, it is something that I'm still trying to make peace with, and it's something that it really puts things in perspective, man. It really does. All this stuff is all fine, well, and good, but we we are mortal creatures, and when you lose someone like DR, it puts everything in perspective, and it really forces you to stop and think. And to anyone watching this that knows him, I'm sure you have similar feelings because he was just a great all around guy, and he's going to be truly missed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll cherish the memories and march forward. And thank you so much for the time today. And we'll talk to you soon.
It was my pleasure. Peace, everyone.